Hi, Dr. Ahadian speaking. Last time I spoke about the economic and problems with regard to the recession and the causation of psychological sequelae and pressure on people and how they are affected and how it's being related. Uh, Questions were asked about discussing more about anxiety and depression and anger during the economic crisis, which I spoke somehow last time. The issue is that as far as the stress that is being pushed on the human being for different kind of reasons, everybody has a different way of mechanism of experiencing and reaction towards the stressful situation and condition that they're being affected. And as far as the research is going with regard to the biological changes and changes in the chemistry of the brain, it's been seen that a stressful situation changes the system and the cells with which they try to stabilize themselves and to get stronger to deal with the stressful situation with regard to changes in their secretions, changes in their ways of adapting themselves, exactly as human beings. So basically a human being is a big complex of lots of cells, and each cell in the system basically tries to adjust itself with the way it's been endowed genetically and preconditioned how to deal with a stressful situation. So even though we don't see a lot of anger and explosion in everybody who's under stress and everybody who's being strained, every person has a different way of exhibiting this quote-unquote anger that is being expressed through the cell up to the basic overall brain system and our behavior. Now, the differences between the changes of expression of this stressful stimuli as anger could be different in different people. It could be expressed as anger profusely, depression, and depression does not mean that somebody has to sit down and cry. The depression is the changes in the biological aspect of the conduction and secretion of certain hormones and enzymes in the brain system, which changes the whole brain system. And then it's like if we compare the brain to a battery, a car battery, so to speak. When the energy and all the substances are being utilized and not being restored, we see a lot of functions of this battery changing, and therefore that's the same thing with the brain, which exhibits the problem as poor concentration, poor memory, poor ability to be patient, poor ability to be able to endure stress and to be able to listen, to be able to have a logical function, to be able to exercise, to be able to utilize the brain to put things together, information together, and integrate all the information and come up with a solution. So therefore we see a lot of problems in depression with regard to ambivalent feelings, not being able to make a decision, poor ability to concentrate, issues with regard to memory loss, issue with regard to reasoning. And then the memory loss is very complicated too. In different ages, when we have problem with the memory, we have a lot of differences between someone who is 20 years old and has memory loss and then 40-year-old that has memory loss, comparing to a 50 or 60-year-old that becomes depressed and has memory loss. So the changes are very different and very big as far as the memory, and then problems related with exhibition of sometimes dementia, that you see a person who's 50 years old and goes through depression that shows signs and symptoms of a person who's 80 years old and get demented, and lots of memory and making decisions and driving, etc., etc. So this is one of the ways that depression shows itself. Another sign of the stress causing the secondary problem is anxiety. Again, anxiety does not mean that we have to have our palms of the hands sweaty only. Anxiety could have a lot of different expressions, sometimes explosiveness, sometimes talking in a rapid mode, sometimes fidgetiness, sometimes attacking and being aggressive, and sometimes isolation and cringing could be sign of anxiety. And then these are the signs that the brain system, biologically is preparing itself to adjust itself to the stressful situation. Again, another change that is very important to keep in mind with the stressful conditions, specifically with chronic stressful conditions, which we're dealing with at this point at 2009 with the economy and recession and all that, is the change in the sleep pattern, which I have discussed that numerous times before, which is a expression of the whole problem, and then a signal to us that there's something going wrong and has to be taken care of. It's like a yellow light, which is the precursor of the red light coming up. So we have to be careful, and the signs of sleep deprivation, sleep increase, and sleep changes are very important signs to keep in mind with regard to finding out that the stressful situation is taking the toll out of us, and therefore to repair that. Now, the reparative process of dealing with the stress is important too, and one of the important ones is being able to share our feelings to our environment and be able to discuss it. That is very important. I have discussed that in sharing in previous talks, and it is very important. One of them that is very important ways to deal with that is therapeutic environment, and then sharing it with the group of people that basically they're all in the same boat, so to speak. One of the other ways of dealing with all this stressful situation, to change the situation with regard to sleep and appetite and concentration and all that, is physical activity. And the physical activity by itself revs up the system, changes the ways that the enzymes and the messengers in the brain system work, and therefore changing that would boost and reboot the system and make the individual more strong to be able to deal with these stressors that he or she is dealing with. The other ways to deal with a stressful situation is medication, obviously, because while we are trying to change our habits and increase physical activity and share the problem, which are all stress reduction and very good, at some point you cannot change everything by extreme physical exercise, because then you would need a lot of physical exercise that the body would not be able to endure. And then sometimes you need to intervene biologically with chemical substances, which is the antidepressant medication and anti-anxiety medication and medication that are mood stabilizers, which are being used